Hello again. This morning what I'll be working on with you is adding integers. And you'll remember that integers are signed numbers. When we were young, we started off learning to count 1, 2, 3. We didn't count zeros. We didn't count -5. We counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then Mom and Dad and Grandma and Granddad were so excited because we could count the whole way to 10. And then we got into math and we learned that, oh, I don't have any cookies left. So how many cookies do I have? Well, I have 0 cookies. So we went from knowing our counting numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, as high as we could count, which are also called natural numbers, to adding this concept in our mind of 0, which means we have nothing. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so forth. Those are called the whole numbers. And then we learned about opposites of numbers, which we talked about just in the last lecture. We said a number and its opposite, they're the same distance from 0 in different directions. So you have a positive 1, which is 1 unit from 0. Then you have a -1, which is 1 unit from 0 in the opposite direction. So we have negative numbers, 0, and positive counting numbers. We're not talking about 1/2 or anything, but we're just talking about negative numbers, 0, and our counting numbers. Those are called the integers. And today we're going to be talking about how do we add integers. In other words, how do we add signed numbers? We know that 2 plus 2 is 4, but what about 2 plus a -2? Or -3 plus a -7? So that's what we're going to touch on as a quick brief review today. But first, can you tell me why it is that the turkey crossed the road? Well, for those of us here in Texas, the turkey crossed the road just to prove to the armadillo that it could actually be done. So, let's go ahead and introduce this according to the way that Bob Jones University Press Algebra 1 does, by adding numbers on a number line. Let's see that we want to add 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We want to add a +2 plus a +3. Now, you know that 2 plus 3 is 5. At least I hope you do by this point. But let's see what would happen on the number line. We would first plot our +2. And we would start here. And then we're going to, you know what, I'm even going to make it more basic than this. Let's go at 0, our beginning point for the problem. We're at 0. What's our first number? It says +2. So +2, so we're going to start at the number line. We're going to go 2 units to the right, because this says move 2 units to the right, which is towards the positive direction of the number line. And now it says add a +3, or go 3 more units to the right on the number line. So we're going to go 3 more units. 1, 2, 3. And we see that we end up at 5 on the number line. We're adding 2 numbers together. We start at 0. We move 2 units to the right on the number line. We're at a +2. We move 2 units to the 3 more units to the right on the number line. 1, 2, 3. And we're at a +5. So that's what happens, that you can see a picture of addition on the number line. Now let's do a different problem here. Let's see that we want to add negative numbers on the number line. We want to add -1 plus a -3. -1, -2, -3, and a -4. So once again, we're going to begin at 0 on the number line. This negative 1 tells me that we're going to be moving 1 unit from 0 in the negative direction, which is to the left on the number line. So we start here at 0, and we're going to move 1 unit to the left. So we have negative 1. Now what are we going to do? This says, in addition, go 3 units further to the left. 1, 2, 3 units further to the left, and we end up with a negative 4. Okay? So negative 1 plus a negative 3 is equal to a negative 4. Let's go ahead and look at problem number 3. This is a new marker and I'm having a hard time getting it to work properly. You have to excuse me there. The next one that I want to show you is what happens when we add a positive and a negative number together. Let's say that we have a plus 3 and they're going to add a negative 1. This is where it's really strange. You've got different signs. Well, let's look at our number line. Once again, I have 0, 1, 2, 3. We're going to start at 0. And this first number here says let's move 3 units in a positive direction from 0. 1, 2, 3. So we're going to stop initially at a positive 3. Next, what's it say? It says we're going to add a negative 1. When we have negative numbers, we're moving towards the left. So we're going to move back to the left and see 1 unit and see where we end up. And you see that we end up at a 2. That's interesting, isn't it? When I think of the numbers 3 and 1, where I get an answer of 2, I'm thinking that I'm subtracting. But we're actually adding positive and negative sign numbers. Now let me show you just a slight variation of this. Let's see what happens if we have a negative 3 and we're going to add a positive 1 to that. See if you can come up with the answer before I show it to you on the number line. So I'm going to have a 0, a 1, a 2, negative 1, negative 2, and a negative 3. So what are we going to do? Let's start at 0 on the number line. The negative 3 tells us to move 3 units to the left. So there's our negative 3. Now it says, let's add a positive 1. Let's move 1 unit to the right. And now you see that we end up with a negative 2 for our answer. Now, you look at this board here. This is pretty messy, isn't it? Can you imagine if we were going to add negative 976 plus 325 on a number line? That would just be really yuck. It would not be a good idea. So there has to be a better way to add positive and negative numbers than using a number line. And it turns out that there's a pattern. And I really only left 3 of our problems up here because you know what to do if you're adding positive numbers, don't you? Positive 3 and a positive 2, there's no question there what your answer is, right? You know that that answer is a positive 5. You have learned to do 2 plus 3 from the time you were, many of you from the time before you even began kindergarten. So you know 2 plus 3 is 5. But what happens now is that we have added some positive and negative signs into here. And let's see if we can find a pattern that will help us out. I'm going to erase all of this messy number lines here where we saw visually how we came up with our solutions, but now it's just getting in our way. Let's see if we can see a pattern that we have here. Okay, the numbers here, the signs here are the same, aren't they? -1 plus a -3 is a -4, and a +1 plus a +3 is equal to a +4. And if you got the positive, you don't need to write that sign. If it doesn't have a sign in front of it, we know that it's talking about a positive number, right? So what you see here is when you're adding numbers, the signs are the same. All you do is you add the numbers. You're actually technically adding their absolute values and keeping the signs, but the way it works in your mind is, okay, the signs are the same, so I just say 1 plus 3. Let's look and see what that sign is, since they're both positive. My answer is positive. We're going to look at these here. -1, -3. The signs are the same. So I'm going to add the 1 and the 3, which is 4. I'm going to use that same sign, which is a -4. There's a technical definition that says if the signs are the same, you add the absolute values of the numbers and then keep the sign of the original numbers. But if you just look, the signs are the same, add them and keep the sign. So this would be the signs are the same. And there's only one possible answer. Only one formula that you're going to use if you have the same signs. The signs are the same, add the numbers, and use the sign that's in front of them. -7 plus -12 is -19. +7 plus +12 is +19. Now, what do you notice here? Positive, negative, negative, positive. Of course, the signs are different. So there must be some pattern here that would help us understand what's going on, and there is. If you're looking at these numbers, and if you would take their absolute values, what's the absolute value for +3? It's 3. Absolute value of a -1, it's 1. So you look at their absolute values and find the bigger number. Or the way high school students think is, okay, I'm not going to pay any attention to that sign. Is that 3 bigger or is the 1 bigger? Well, the 3 is bigger. So you're going to say 3 minus 1 is equal to 2. Because you put the bigger number first and you use whatever sign is here. We've got a +3, so your sign is a +2. Well, let's look here. We've got a -3 and a +1. In school you think, okay, I'm going to ignore the signs. I'm going to say 3 minus 1 is 2, but what sign am I going to use? You're going to use the sign of the bigger number here. The absolute value of 3 is greater than the absolute value of -1, so we're going to use that positive sign. +3 plus a -1 is a +2. Here, the absolute value of -3 is bigger than the absolute value of 1. Or in our minds, when we're looking at that and ignoring the signs, 3 is bigger than 1. So when we do our subtraction problem, we're going to use the sign of that larger number. Not technically algebraically theory correct, but what you're going to do in actual practice. Pick the number that looks bigger to you when you ignore the signs, subtract, and keep the sign of the larger number. So that's what I'm going to say here. I'm going to say subtract and keep the sign of the larger. And in parentheses, I'm going to put absolute values for those of you who are being careful to get all of the theory. Subtract absolute values and keep the sign with the larger number. Keep the sign that is associated with the larger number. My hand is squeaking here. Associated with the larger number. Okay? Is that pretty clear? A lot of kids get really messed up when they're adding and subtracting signed numbers. And that's because you think, okay, I'm adding, but how come I'm actually subtracting? It has to do with lots of, little bits of theory that are in there. But if you can remember that when you're adding numbers that have different signs, it just really becomes a subtraction problem. And you keep the sign associated with the larger number, and that will help you. So chew on this for a little bit, work some problems, and you won't have any more trouble adding when you're adding integers. Thanks for watching.